I'm Monty. This is the Marriage Bites podcast.
We get real about the joys and challenges of marriage through bites of wisdom we have learned over the years.
Our aim is to share this wisdom with you so your marriage won't bite. Hey babe, another episode of the Marriage Bites podcast.
Episode 4.
What the heck?
I know.
Shouldn't it be 43?
It seems like it's been that long.
I see. I'll tell you what's been long is this summer.
Really?
Yeah, the summer's just been dragging on.
Oh.
I'm tired of the heat.
No, the summer was totally short for me.
Oh. Well, this, for our listeners, last night we went out for a walk, and it cooled off a little bit, but it was still pretty darn hot. And I think I'm ready for the colder weather.
Yeah. I love fall weather. I love the colors of the trees and the food from the garden and...
Pie.
Oh, yeah.
Pie and party. And there should probably be a participle in there, too. It's the triple P. Pie, party, participle.
Yep.
Perfection. Oh, it's a quattro now.
Oh, snap.
Snap diddly whack. What else is going on?
Well, 2 of our kids are leaving us in the next few weeks.
Sweet!
Bittersweet for me.
You know, it is an interesting thing. I know people, they really get, teary-eyed and they cry when their adult kids leave the home.
That's me.
Well, I might feel some feelings too. But it's really good to see them go out and make something of themselves. Like our oldest, when he first went to college, it was a little bit sad, but boy, we've seen a lot of growth. And it's really great.
It is, yeah. It's not like they're falling off the face of the earth. They're just going away from me, so I don't see them every day.
Yeah. It's great to see them, though, go from being teenage turds
don't call them that.
Teenage bozos. No, super smarter than everyone teenagers, to real life smacking them in the face a little bit. It's kind of a good growth thing.
Yeah, it is good to see them growing and learning new things and seeing that everything that I've been saying for the past 20 years is correct.
But they package it differently so that you were still wrong and they were always right.
Yeah. If you have teenagers or adult children, you know what we're talking about.
Yes. If you don't and you think, my little sweetheart will never be like that, you got an education coming.
Well, and maybe you'll get lucky. Who knows?
Yeah, that's like being drafted into the NFL or winning the lottery.
Well, some people do get drafted, and some people do in the lottery.
I know. There's like a few out of the millions of people.
Yeah. So what have you been up to this week?
Oh, boy. So my shift changed. I was working grave shift, working all night. I've been doing that for 8 months, and now I'm on day shift. So I worked some day shift, and it was really weird. I'm like, what is this bright ball in the sky, and why is it so hot outside? But it was good. The calls for service that I go to and the things that I do are a lot different working the day shift. Mm-hmm. But it's good. It's, in my opinion, regardless of what the media and some politicians say, it's honorable work, and it's an honor to do it. It's super hard, but it's an honor to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I was talking with a friend on Instagram this morning about how, as wives, we also have our part to play in the protecting and serving portion, because as the wife, we keep everything in order on the home front that allows the husbands to go out and do their part. And so we might think, well, he's the one in danger. He's the one doing all the work. And I'm just home taking care of all the boring stuff. But I think it really is important for wives to understand that your role is so needed and it's so important. And you really are contributing to the overall good, even if you feel like, well, I haven't even left the house in 3 days.
Right. I think the world, though, says a different thing to women like that.
Oh, totally.
Or to men that decide to stay home. The thing is if a wife or a mother decides to stay home with the kids, that is so honorable and so needed in our day and age. I think the decline of our society is a lot of times from a broken home and broken values or no values or the wrong values being taught. And a lot of that starts with the mother. I know it's also the father's responsibility, but moms have a great influence on children and civilization for sure. So anyway, maybe that's for another topic or another day.
Maybe we'll do a whole podcast about that sometime.
maybe.
Good idea.
So today's podcast, I think, might go a little long. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how wordy and talkative we get. But it's going to be entitled, Are You a Debate Enthusiast? Meaning,
how do you manage conflict?
Personally or together?
That's the title.
Oh.
The title is, How do you manage conflict?
I thought it was, Are You a Debate Enthusiast?
The topic. Did we not talk about this beforehand?
Well, we did. We talked about a lot of things. So we're going to be talking about conflict today between a couple.
So I really believe that any kind of relationship, whether it be friends, whether it be siblings, whether it be marriage relationships, family, coworkers, if there is absolutely no conflict, unless it's a really surface relationship, there's a good chance that it's not a very healthy relationship. When there is a lack of conflict, usually it means that one or both people are not speaking up, which then often leads to resentment.
So you're saying that deep relationships require conflict. Conflict will be part of that.
Yes, pretty much. So even though conflict is pretty much a given, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, kind of backing up a little bit, I think that conflict in a marriage or an intimate relationship, I think you'll see, or at least you'll feel like there's a lot more conflict there. But that doesn't mean that things are going to fall apart.
Right. A lot of times, especially newlyweds, say if they fight, it means there's something wrong with their relationship and that maybe they married the wrong person, or maybe there's something going wrong and they shouldn't be fighting because they're in love. But
Right.
Can you fight with somebody you love?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like you say, there's a right way and the wrong way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you tell us what that means?
When a discussion remains centered around the conflict topic, that's usually a good thing. When you keep it at the topic at hand rather than go into personal attacks, insults, yelling at each other. Also, going and suddenly, sometimes somebody who's angry will then all of a sudden start talking about every little thing that's wrong with the other person, or every grievance that they ever had will suddenly be brought up into this conversation.
So a lot of historical data from the past is brought up.
Yes.
Right. And that's a losing strategy.
Yes, and because it's distracting from the actual problem that you're trying to work through.
Right. I think you touched on it there just a little bit, is that how we handle ourselves during that conflict really matters.
Mm-hmm.
I think name calling and becoming physically violent are never a place for an intimate, I guess, conflict. With my work, I've seen many times where a guy or a gal will get so frustrated, so angry, they resort to calling names, and some of those names and some of those things that are said are so damaging, and you really can't take those back. And I mean, so damaging that it tears the relationship apart. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, but I've never once, and we've had some doozy arguments and conflicts where I've never felt like I've needed to call you a name. Yeah. I've never felt like I needed to get violent with you. It doesn't even come to my mind.
Yeah, I have noticed throughout the years that I think one of the things, we make plenty of mistakes, but one of the things that we do well is not resorting to just personal attacks, name calling, that kind of stuff when we do have disagreements about things. Maybe it doesn't always stay right, on topic. Sometimes it goes off the rails.
Sometimes we go off the rails into the weeds.
But the one thing that we don't do is attack each other. And I think that has been one of the main reasons that our relationship has stayed so strong.
I agree. I think it was modeled to us. When our parents would have conflict, if they had conflict, I didn't see my parents fight much. But I think I knew it happened. But they never called each other names. Never, ever. They never got physically violent. They discussed the topic at hand, and they did it in a civilized manner.
Yeah, I think our parents were largely taught to debate behind closed doors, not to let your kids see you fight, which might be a good advice, but it might not be.
I think it depends on what you're arguing about.
It's not the only way to handle it.
I think it depends on what you're arguing about. Now, I think for those out there who are listening who say, well, my parents fought all the time in front of us. They hit each other. They called each other names. Lots of vulgarity and profanity. you're just lucky your parents didn't have that. But what about us who have been exposed to this? What do we do? And I think you have to dig deep and be the bigger person and cut that out of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Not allow that to be part of your life, because you can be the instrument to break that chain with your children.
Absolutely.
Even though you may have had a challenging childhood in regards to that, doesn't mean that your children have to, and you can break that chain.
Yeah. That's so true.
And that might require you to be coached. It might require you to be counseled. It just depends on what your situation is. And if you do feel like you're spinning your wheels and you need some help, it's okay to go to a professional. Like I say, there's life coaches out there that do it, that can help you, and there's counselors out there that can help you, and therapists.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so you can use a conflict to break the marriage or the relationship apart. But if you do conflict in a constructive way, it actually can help to build the relationship. I don't know about you, but I've felt even closer to you after some of our biggest conflicts.
I would agree. I think after some of our conflicts, I feel like it's like we have the explosive part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the, okay, let's calm down and think about it, where we're starting to analyze what the other is saying, and then we come to some sort of resolution. And then I feel like we have much more intimacy after that.
After the conflict hangover is gotten over, sometimes there will be some revelations happen during a thing. One of us has been holding something back for a really long time, and during this discussion, they finally feel like they have an opportunity to share that information. Some deep held, not secret exactly, but something that maybe they feel a lot of shame about, or
fear.
Fear that they've been afraid to say, and then they say it, and then the other person is like, oh, I had no idea. And sometimes those negative feelings that might come from all of that can last a little while, sometimes a day or two, or I don't know, sometimes a long time. I kind of call that conflict hangover, because you're not necessarily still fighting with each other, but there's still a lot of processing going on in your mind. And so once that's over, I feel like then we can get back to normal. That's when we see the improvement in our relationship, the increased closeness, or that kind of thing.
Right. I think with any kind of conflict, it's important to be honest, and it's not always easy to be honest, especially when you're holding things back that you fear telling everyone about.
Yeah.
Or not everyone, but your spouse about, or your significant other about. I think there's things that you might be afraid of them hearing because you're worried about what they're going to think. And that can be something that can really withhold that intimacy.
Mm-hmm. So yesterday, it's interesting that we had this topic picked out for at least a week.
At least.
And we've been talking about it and thinking about it. And then all of a sudden yesterday, we had a fairly...
Dun, dun, dun.
We didn't yell at each other.
We had a conflict.
We had conflict yesterday. This conflict started out being about the sleeping arrangements of our 2-year-old. Now, I think we both have the same end goal in mind when it comes to that, but the way we want to solve it, or the way we want to get there, maybe is different for each of us. And so it started out as that, but as we got more and more into talking about things, more and more stuff came out, a lot deeper stuff than just, where the baby sleeps. And I'll be honest, for most of the morning, I was kind of in conflict hangover. I was still thinking about it. I still wasn't really feeling ready to connect with you again. And it took me a while to really get through it all and process everything, because you told me some deep stuff yesterday, and sometimes it takes a while.
It does. And I think for all of you listening, it's okay to feel that disconnect during conflict, because even though you disconnect and you're arguing, if you can bring it back together, there will be greater intimacy there. There's greater connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about what healthy conflict looks like.
Okay.
Are you ready for that?
Sure.
So I think the very first step in a healthy conflict is to self-confront. And what I mean by that is to really look at yourself and ask yourself, am I wrong here? Or what am I doing that might be making this situation worse? How have I contributed to this problem? And that self-confrontation really helps you get honest with yourself, because you can't be truly honest with your spouse if you're not honest with yourself.
Well, I think when you're especially new to relationships that are intimate, you wanna really hold on to your thing. It's, by golly, I'm right, and you just want to hold on to it like it's a cute little kitten or something like that.
Well, we all want to be right. Of course we do.
Right. But
because
it takes
being wrong feels bad.
It shoots your ego in the foot.
So of course we're going to avoid that.
Sure, it shoots your ego in the foot. And everybody loves their ego. The thing is, it takes humility, and it takes for you to be mature. And it's I think that's something that people grow into. At least they can grow into if they want to grow. Mm-hmm. Is that you're not always right, and having some empathy and looking at the other person's, your significant other's side of things. Mm-hmm. Try to put yourself in their shoes and see if you can feel, or at least see how they feel about it, whatever it might be.
So sometimes I can't let go of how I feel I'm right. But it can help to say, even though I'm right and he's wrong, or he might be right in some areas and I'm right in other areas, to be able to look at it from another person's point of view, even if I still think it's wrong, to be able to say, why would this feel right to him? That has really helped me to be a lot healthier in conflict.
I think eventually our goal is to, if we have differing opinions on things or different thoughts, is to come to each other, express our thoughts and feelings, and then come up with a solution without becoming so triggered by things.
I saw a quote from Jennifer Finlayson Fife, I think, the other day, where she said something to the effect that it takes a lot of strength to care more about what's true than about being right. And I think that's what we're talking about here, that to be committed to truth and honesty rather than being right is what will lead to a good outcome.
Yeah, agreed.
And sometimes it's okay to let your spouse be wrong, to just let go of being right, or let go of trying to convince them that you're right, or that it needs to be done a certain way or whatever, and to let them be wrong. Because when you're trying to convince them, you're trying to control them. But we all know we can't control our spouse. So letting go of that control and allowing them to be wrong, or allowing them to be right and you be right even though you have opposing views, it helps you let go of a lot of that negative energy.
Right. And it's okay for you to be wrong and to let go of things that you think you're so right about, because you may be wrong.
A lot of times I have found that whatever is causing the conflict is actually, we think about it as somebody's flaws. Like, you're just lazy because you won't pick up your socks or put the toilet seat down. Or the other person is just not listening to me and trying to be a jerk. But a lot of times there's another perspective to look at this from, and that is to see that the core of the conflict is simply a person using their strength out of balance. Or sometimes it's a strength that they have and it's being used out of context.
So that's a pretty advanced concept there. You might want to explain that a little more.
Yes, I do have an example. So I sometimes get really focused on a project that I'm working on. And I think that's a good thing, because I can start a project and follow it through and not leave too many loose ends. I'm not always really good at this, but when I get focused in on something, then I think of that as a strength, a good quality. But sometimes when that focus gets placed in the wrong place, like controlling other people, or when I am getting too focused and I can't break away from a project when I'm needed elsewhere, that can cause a conflict between myself and my husband, or maybe one of my children. And so it's a good quality, but being used in the wrong way that then causes conflict. So if you were to come to me and this was a problem, rather than thinking of it as me being selfish and not wanting to stop what I was doing, or thinking of it as some kind of flaw, if you were able to think of it as, listen, this is one of her good qualities. It's just out of balance right now. It totally changes the way you show up in relationships. On your side, there's what police officers call command presence, and it's basically being authoritative. Is that how you describe it?
Yeah, that's part of it. Well, it's when you come into the presence of others, just the appearance of you exudes command. Like, I'm taking command of this scene. That's done through a good-looking uniform with all your gear ship shape. It's the way you hold yourself, the way you stand, not becoming overly emotional, on some certain scenes that you go to. That's command presence. I'm taking command. I don't necessarily need to start barking orders, but I'm here. I'm like a rock. I'm a stone. I'm something that can be relied upon. That's command presence.
Okay. Thank you for that. So this is a really important quality for a police officer to have when he's on duty, in his job, entering a chaotic situation, that kind of thing. But if he uses his command presence in that way at home with his wife or with his children, that sometimes doesn't really go over very well. It comes across as controlling or demanding, which I don't want to be treated that way, and our kids don't want to be treated that way. And sometimes there's a conflict there. It is a chaotic situation from time to time.
That's an understatement.
Yes.
Living in a house with 6 boys.
But when that
crazy.
gets out of control, then it throws the balance of the family off a little bit and can cause problems. If I come to that and think, well, he's just being a jerk, he's just controlling, he just is, if I'm thinking of it as a character flaw, then I'm going to approach him in a certain way. But when I realize, okay, this is actually a good quality for him to have in his life, and it's just out of balance, I'll speak to him differently. I'll come and I'll, approach the problem not as there's something wrong with you, but rather like, I see this is happening, and how can we resolve this? How can I support you? How can I help you? What do you need? Because when our strengths get out of balance, I think it is a sign that there's a need not being met. So when you come to your partner from a place of there's something wrong with you, you're going to show up one way. And when you can come to your partner as, how can I help you? What needs do you have that maybe I can help you meet? It's a whole different energy. This is when it can grow a relationship rather than tear it down.
I see. So I think the last thing we're going to talk about is giving yourself some grace, giving yourself some forgiveness. If you've started to change the way that you're dealing with conflict in a more productive and a more healthy way, sometimes we revert back to what we've known in the past. Mm-hmm. And we have to kind of get after ourselves or reaffirm that we're going to not conflict in an unhealthy way.
Right.
And I think it's important to say, you know what? I did fall back into my old ways, and I need to fix that. I need to get back on track. Because everybody does. Mm-hmm. Even people who are pros at it, they still slip because we're human, right?
Yep.
And it's okay.
Yes, because when you add self-judgment on top of that, then you can't forgive yourself for messing up.
You have to be honest with yourself if you're going to do that too. Mm-hmm. Don't just allow yourself to slip back into old ways. Right. You have to be honest with yourself.
It is worth keeping at it, even if it's hard and even if you fall flat on your face 100 times. It's worth it for yourself, for your own personal growth, and for the benefit of all of your relationships around you. When one relationship is better, it improves all of your relationships. When you learn how to do marriage better, you learn how to be a coworker better. You learn how to be a better parent. You learn how to be a better friend or
a better person.
Yeah, it's worth working on because it affects all the areas of your life.
Yep, it sure does. I think learning how to have healthy conflict is so important. And hopefully everybody who's listening can take a little bit of information from this, take a little bite from what we've talked about so your marriage doesn't bite.
Yeah.
Because having a marriage that bites.
It bites.
And perhaps folks out there listening, if there is anyone listening, we probably will cover this again.
Yeah.
Because, boy, conflict is something that's always there.
Yeah.
And we can all get better at it.
Right. And if you have conflict tips that help you and that have helped your marriage grow, I hope you'll let us know. We want to hear what works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Send us an email. What's the email address that you need to send that to?
info@andelinprice.com. And there will be a link in the show notes if you need it.
All right. I think we've got it.
All right.
All right. Let's go to our fight club.
Sounds good. See you all next week.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the Marriage Bites podcast.
Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the fun.
Let us know what you took away from this episode by sending us an email at info@andelinprice.com.
You can also see what we're up to on Facebook and Instagram at Andelin Price Coaching. Or you can visit my website, andelinprice.com, to learn more. See you next week.
Bye. You bite it and then it sucks. I don't know if that all works out.
I don't know if that analogy works very well.
Well, it's the analogy at hand.
Okay.
I'm going to sneeze.
Ooh, bless you.
That one had some recoil to it. Wow. Hope no one heard that.
Oh, gosh, you're funny.